Eugene, listen. You're very cute, and I'm glad that you're here. Please don't run into my camera, though, okay? Okay, boo? Okay, sweet boy. Hey, sexy beast. Nope. 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 That tail, that Tasmanian devil tail of yours is... Word up, people. I am dressed for the gym today, even though I am not going to the gym today, but it is a writing day, and I did not want to take the time to put on actual clothes for you. So that is why I'm wearing a tank top and what appears to be booty shorts, even though I have no legitimate booty. But whatever. All right, so here's the thing. I'm going to try to make this quick. I recorded a video yesterday stating that I had began work on book 4. And so I've been working on that today, and I have a few thoughts, a few things that I've been working on, trying to sort out. So think about this. At what point is it most agreeable for me to share chapters of the manuscript with others? So this is a debate that I've been trying to sort out for a while now. So let me give you a bit of history, because as is always the case, I have an innate need to present more information than you actually need. Just ask anyone in my life who's ever heard me tell a story, including some readers who've reviewed my books. What insanity ensues. So, all right, I have basically narrowed down the time frame from when I started writing book 3 to, I probably started it sometime in 2017, finished the first draft in 2018. 2019 is when I went back and realized I had to re-edit what was book 1 at the time. I am so exhausted in explaining that the first 2 books used to be one book. And if you've been following along this whole time, you must be exhausted with it too. But it is the circumstances with which we find ourselves, in which we find ourselves. So in 2019, I went back and edited book 1, which was the first 2 books in one volume. At that time, I edited it again because I realized that book 2, which became book 3, why don't I do this? Why don't from now on I refer to the original Scarecrow Hunters, which became 2 separate books, as the original Scarecrow Hunters. And instead of calling The Singing Bones book 2, which became book 3, just call it The Singing Bones, or Bones. All right, so the original Scarecrow, I realized, was not publishable in its current state in 2019, which I had done the most previous edit was probably in 2017, maybe even earlier, 2016. So I knew that I had to edit it, and I did. I did another edit in 2019 of that book, and still didn't feel like it was right. So that is when I made the decision to just bite the bullet. Bite the bullet. Bite the bullet? Am I saying that correctly? Whatever. And hire an editor. Best decision as an author I've ever made. It was hiring an editor. She then said, take your original Scarecrow and divide that into 2 books, The Scarecrow Hunters and The Greedy Shadow. I, at that point, felt like The Singing Bones was a complete manuscript. I would just get her to do a quick copy edit and, no sweat off my back. It would be easy peasy. And then I'd have 2 books. When she just, anyway, I took her up on her suggestion and divided the original Scarecrow into 2 books. I worked on those. I wrote those, let's say from scratch. A lot of the original Scarecrow still exists in the Scarecrow Hunters, but A Greedy Shadow was literal, like a bare bones outline of what eventually came. So much of that story was added when I was writing it from scratch in 2020. So back in 2021, I worked basically on polishing those 2 manuscripts, and I probably at least revisited some of Bones, but I don't think I ever actually did any real work on Bones in 2021. I started that in the spring, let's say, of 2022, of this year. So my beta reader, my primary beta reader, Anya, the German, she became my beta reader in 2018-ish, I'm going to say. It may have been 2019, but I'm gonna say 2018. Now, she had read the original version of Scarecrow. She had read the first completed draft, which I thought was a final draft, of Bones. So in 2020, when I began rewriting the original Scarecrow Hunters into the Scarecrow Hunters and A Greedy Shadow, when I would finish a section, a chapter, I would upload it to her so that she could provide comments. Now, I wouldn't go back and read those comments until I'd worked my way through the entire novel, through the entire manuscript. And then as I was going back through, I would reference her comments, I would make adjustments or consider her suggestions, whatever. Here, and at some point in 2019, I actually wrote the prologue and the first couple of chapters for book 4. And I sent those to her. Only after 2021, and only now, am I beginning to question when is the appropriate time for me to send chapters to my beta reader. Because part of it is she has been through this story with me since 2018, let's say, in a beta reader capacity. And besides me, she probably knows these characters better than anyone else. I would say I'm pretty sure I've referred to her as Elliot's German mother at some point, because she loves that boy, I think, as much as it is possible for a person who didn't create him to love him. And so here's where I am. This is the first time that I am starting a manuscript from scratch where I have an active, vibrant, little, tiny community of beta readers of some sort. So I have Anya, I have Logan, who is my illustrator, but also serves to give me broad strokes as a beta reader. He doesn't pay attention to the minutia, the details that Anya does. I mean, he does when something sticks out to him and he makes a comment, but overall, he just gives me like general feedback on the flow, the story. He likes to point out when I use a word or a name that he doesn't like. And if I make a typographical error or if something doesn't make sense, those kinds of things. It's just a different type of perspective from Anya, and I appreciate that. I have a few other people who read and give me input, but not necessarily at that early of a stage. So the question is, when do I begin to share chapters with Anya, my beta reader? I know when I will share chapters with Logan, my illustrator. That is once the entire manuscript has a completed first draft and I am working through those edits, the second round. Once I finalize a chapter in my second round of edits, or my first round of edits following the initial first draft, I will then print and mail those to Logan. not only is he reading them and giving me feedback, but he is also illustrating at that time. So he begins to illustrate those chapters then. In the past, well, with Bones, in my edit of Bones, basically that's what I did. I sent him and Anya chapters at the same time, and that was of what we will just call a finished first draft, even though I had edited it multiple times. But we're going to call it a first draft because I approached it as a first draft this year, while I was working on it. So as I'm writing chapters of book 4 now, the question has been, do I go ahead and send these chapters once I move on from them to Anya now, or do I wait until I have finished the complete full manuscript and I'm sending Logan chapters? Do I send Anya chapters at the same time? And the question comes down to a couple of things. One is, when do I want outside influence? And the reality is, I'm not going to get outside influence until I'm working on my second draft at the earliest anyway, because even if I sent Anya chapters now, I wouldn't look at those until I'm working through the edits. I'm editing the existing full-length manuscript. So this is kind of what I've decided. Based on many factors, I need to have this story to myself for a while before I share it with other people because, for one. For two is, as I am writing this first full manuscript, it is really in an open, vulnerable state and can change drastically. I might be working on chapter 19 and realize that I have to go back and completely overhaul chapter 3 because of something that happens then. And I need to lay the foundation, way back in the beginning of the book, which means that if I send anyone chapters from this first draft, by the time they get to the end of the book, some of those earlier chapters may be completely different. That isn't an issue because that could technically happen at any stage of editing the manuscript. But here's where I've kind of landed with this. I think my first draft of writing a manuscript, I approach it as a writer. My second pass, so my first edit of the manuscript, I approach it as the author. And I don't know if this is just a way that I keep these two concepts separated in my mind or distinguished from each other in my mind, but this is what I mean. A writer writes, an author publishes books. This first draft I write as a writer, which means that the only audience I'm really interested in is me. I'm writing this for myself. So during this first draft period, the story is entirely mine. I may share segments of it here and there with Anya or Logan or someone else, for that matter, if I think that it's interesting or I'm excited and I want to, whatever. But the manuscript as a whole is just for me. Like, I am the only audience I care about in the first draft because I approach that as a writer. When I begin to edit that complete first draft and work on the second draft of the manuscript, that is when I approach it as an author, which is where I begin to think of it from the perspective of how will my readers experience this book, and all of the other facets that go into publishing the book. Illustrations, for example. Overall impressions from those people who are like Logan and Anya, who are very invested in the story and have been since the first word of book 1. That's kind of how I see this playing out. But the question now becomes, at what point I am anticipating it taking me between 3 and 6 months to write the complete draft. And I know 3 and 6 months or whatever. But writing happens very quickly. Creating new words on a page happens very quickly for me. I have a very, very solid outline, and this is all discovery for me. This is all new and fresh, and it flows. It flows much easier than editing. Yes, I am worried about structure. Yes, I am worried about how it fits into the greater story. I'm worried about what came before it, what comes after it, all of those things. But I'm not so worried about, am I being too descriptive here? Am I giving too much backstory on this particular Brogdon tradition, for example? Or am I sharing too much of the tapestry that makes up this world and not focusing enough on the characters and their specific story? I don't have to worry about all of that now. That part will come when I begin to share it with other people. Writing is it is discovery for me. And I know that I have an outline, and that outline I have toiled over for years at this point, and made some really serious, significant changes to it as recently as a couple months ago, as you might remember. Even so, writing doesn't feel like I'm creating or making this up as much as it feels like I am discovering this story. Like I'm some kind of an archaeologist or historian, and I have been studying and hypothesizing and using clues from here and there. But the writing is actually being on an archaeological dig and actually discovering the tomb or whatever it is, and uncovering it one word at a time until I have the full tapestry, the full picture at the end of the first draft. That part is so much fun to me. That discovery is so much fun to me that it happens very quickly. It doesn't take the amount of time and energy that it would take to edit the manuscript. You would think it would be reverse, or maybe you would think it would be reverse. Creating, a 300-page manuscript when there's from a 0-page manuscript, you would think that would take much longer than having a 300-page manuscript and editing it. Like, you're not adding 300 pages of words, you're just reading 300 pages of words. Doesn't it take longer to read than it does to write? But editing is far more than reading. I don't experience the book as a reader until I am recording the audiobook chapters, after the book has been proofed, formally finalized. Like, it is done, closed, I can't make any changes. That's when I read the chapters for the audiobook, and that is the first time I approach the book, strictly speaking, as a reader. Even then, I am still having to pay attention to what I'm saying, but that, how I'm speaking and capturing and all that, that really becomes more important during the editing version of editing the audiobook. Reading the audiobook aloud to record each of the chapters is the first time I approach the book, strictly speaking, as a reader and get to experience it as a reader, and that is one of my favorite times. It rivals, honestly, this first draft writing stage, the discovery stage, writing it as a writer rather than author. Experiencing the book as a writer and experiencing the book as a reader, those two bookend experiences at the beginning of the book and at the end of the book's creation, are two of my favorite parts. At the beginning, I'm discovering it. At the end, I'm experiencing it. Independent of any of the responsibility of the creator, of the archaeologist, or the deity of this world. And that is a lot of fun to me. That's a lot of fun. The author part, which begins with the second draft in earnest begins in the second draft. I mean, it's there at the beginning, and it's certainly there at the end, because when I'm reading it as a reader, I am also making note of anything that needs to be updated in subsequent editions, typos, those kinds of things. I don't let myself make notes of anything I would want to change in the wording that isn't like a technical problem. I make, it has to stay. Anyway, this was not a quick video, was it? Yeah, so that's just I don't know if it's interesting to you or not, but that's just a bit of insight into my process as a writer, author, reader. All right, people, listen. Peace out, home skillets. Take care of yourselves. I don't have anything more encouraging than that to say. Be beautiful in your own way. Find what makes you happy and do that. And remember that the most important perspective is your own. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't have people in your life who give you input. Isolation is a bad thing. Isolation is as bad for us as surrounding ourselves with people who see the world exactly the way we do. That's just another form of isolation. So get some diversity into your life. Just make sure that the people that you give access to your most private self, they are qualified to offer feedback and opinions and insight into what they see. Because some people aren't qualified. Those are usually the ones that are the most vocal about what they think. Yeah, let's don't talk about those people. Find good quality people who don't necessarily see the world like you do, who have different backgrounds and therefore different perspectives, but who are not, who may challenge you, but not like talk down to you like you're an idiot because you see the world differently from them. But always, 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 your number one critic should be yourself. Your number one influence should be you, just not independent of other people. Does that sound like a contradiction? If you don't understand what I'm saying, I don't know what to tell you because I'm too tired. I'm not even tired. I don't know, I'm kind of tired. Hopefully I can find a better balance between those two, because up to this point it's been one or the other. So we'll see. Yeah, I'm not going to go back and restate whatever it was I was trying to say. I don't even remember what it is.